If you've never heard of Masterpaste Original, well, it's a white wax medium, a cold wax paste, and it's a soft paste that you can mix either with dry pigment or with oil paint colours. It's applied cold and then it's fused with open flame, a low heat actually, just up to 75 Celsius. And here I'm mixing dry powdered pigment. And when you start, be very careful to fold it in. Don't rush at it, because the last thing you want is dust from dry pigment in your workspace. It's very easy to mix up. You can see how soft it is and how easily the colour blends into the wax. Using oil colour, of course, is very similar, except that you've now introduced oil into the formulation and it's slower to dry, but you choose. Now the solvent that I've just put onto this piece of tissue is a way of cleaning up your work area, and I really wouldn't do this normally now, I'm just doing it for the film. But the idea is that you can clean all your tools and your workspace up very, very quickly and easily, just with a little bit of solvent. That's what I use, and it's a safe, non-toxic solvent. I just wanted to mention a bit about working with oil colours and MPO. Basically, you mix the oil colour into the MPO in just the same way as dry pigment using your spatulas. And when I work onto bare board, bare MDF, what I tend to do is cover it with the MPO first and then just fuse it in, just melt it in using a low heat source like this electric paint stripper. So here I've got some Winsor & Newton oil colours, mix it in. This is how I create the reflective first coating. You can use different types of heat sources. Here's some more open flame torches. These ones are a bit more fierce, so you have to hold them further away and just really be careful not to burn the pigments or the MPO. And this is a landscape that I tried with the oil colour and MPO, using the palette knives, just that mixing knife really, worked out quite well. And now back to dry pigment with the Masterpaste. This is Triadic Question, and this is Wax Fraction, both recent works done just before the one we're about to see. I'm working onto a piece of MDF board, 656mm by 404. It's 9mm thick and it's primed with a white clay paint. Or you could use white emulsion, or I actually like to work straight onto the board quite often. And I'm just going to show you a build-up of marks. Now, all of this was put on with that mixing knife, and my initial concept was just a circle with a rectangle overlapping it. I really don't know what's going to come out of this, so I've started off working with a sort of ochre, light ochre colour. One of the things I love about the Masterpaste is how quickly it sort of becomes touch dry. So basically you can keep working on the image pretty much continuously, especially something as large as what I'm working on here. And so I've put in some sort of lighter highlights to get started, and now I'm mixing up some more pigment. It's the dry powdered type of pigment. And I put on edges and then some shading with that. What I'm doing is building up body to this composition, and I've taken a whole series of photos so that you can see this build up. There isn't a lot of video actually on here, but during this little video I am going to show you some basic processes for working with Masterpaste Original. So you can see I'm putting in some mid-tones and darker tones, trying to make a bit more solidity. And when you actually look at the surface and touch the surface, it's very visually rich, although to the finger, to the touch, it's not actually highly textured. But it's a lovely surface to look at visually. Some red to warm it up a bit, and then some blue to cool it down again. And you can see by now that I've sort of got a landscape starting to go on in that rectangular frame. And the circle's sort of turning into a ball with some light inside it, so sort of like a crystal ball, I suppose. And I called it Mindscape Momento by the time I'd finished. Now if you look at the top left and bottom right, you can see some sort of scratched marks. And what I've done there is I've used a scraping tool and worked back through the wax, scratching some off, and then applied a yellow wax, in this case, over the top of it. And you can see how those scratches have taken the filling of that other wax. And so you can get some really nice sort of interesting workings going on. And here I am again rocking between lighter and darker colours, just trying to find a way forward to make this idea actually work. You can see that the light has been there almost from the start. Now so far I'd worked cold all the way through, but here I decided to use a torch. And this is the same torch that the creator of Masterpaste Original, Antonin Sedlacik, hope I've said his name right, same one that Antonin uses, Bossom, and it's controlled on the actual gas cylinder here at the top. You can hear the gas coming through. Click ignition, and the flame is way too hot at the moment, so I'm turning it down. First of all, I'm just going to lock on the trigger so I don't have to hold that. And you'll hear on this torch that it whistles strangely. So I've discovered that if I just turn it down to the point where it stops whistling, then that's just perfect for what I want to do. The heat is really low, so low that I can even bear it on my hand. But listen, be really careful if you actually test it this way, because you need to start a long way away. You're looking for a very low heat, just enough to melt the wax, that's all. So I fused the whole thing at that stage, just to make sure that all the wax was in one sort of coat, and then I carried on building on top of that. So you can work on top of the fusing. You can fuse every layer if you want to, but you don't have to. And so I rocked between light and dark, added some black here to bring a lot of solidity, and then lightened it up with some yellows and pinks, and I finished off with a little bit of pale blue, just to sort of round it. And I could have gone on working for ages, but you have to stop at some point. So here I am actually using the hot air gun, and well, this flame torch, and I'm working in bands. I'll do a little bit here just to show you more clearly, and I'm working a little bit too fast here really. But it's better to be light on the fusing than heavy. If you fuse too hard, you can easily overmelt the wax, and then it becomes a bit too liquid. What will happen is that the surface will sort of become one. You'll see the wax go down into a more even surface as you do this fusing. And I work in both directions. See the tip there, how hot it is? Be careful. It needs to be away in a safe place. And once you've finished and it's cooled down, this is a few minutes later now actually, sometimes I use my fingers just for polishing because I like that effect, or sometimes I use a cloth. And this is a piece of old t-shirt, I think. And brings it up into a beautiful sheen, a lovely shiny velvety sheen. And the surface has got a texture, but it's not a heavy texture, it's quite a light texture. So this was my eventual image that I discovered, and I was really quite pleased with it. I haven't worked a great deal with Masterpaste Original, so for me it's very interesting to see how the colours can work together. And working with a cold paste, you can put layers on top of other layers much more easily than with heated wax and hot tools. And even as a photographer, this is great stuff to photograph. Look at that for colours and interest. Working the image in the way that I normally do really, which is in an imaginative way. And my landscape turned out well. I put a little bit of sort of fantasy into that, and that frames work well for it. So the overlapping rectangle and circle turned into a framed landscape and a sort of crystal ball, I guess. And I was quite pleased with that, and I called it, as I said, Mindscape Momento. This Masterpaste Original Cold Wax Encaustic Medium is really quite a fascinating and beautiful material to use. Very controllable, made by Antonin Sedlacik of Canada. encausticworld.com is the place to find that out. And then these websites, masterpasteoriginal.com and masterpasteoriginal.co.uk for Europe. These are places where you can get the stuff and find out more information about it. So from me, Michael Bossom, well, I just seem to keep melting away. Hey, thanks for watching. Bye.